Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became Ghastly Hero Part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗵𝗃 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Your POV. I awoke with a start as 𝗵𝗃 voice was sounded directly by my ear. Hey, wake up. It's your first day. I rubbed my eyes groggily and looked up at the blue-haired man-child. First day for what? I've been doing missions for the past 3 years, 𝗵𝗃. No, you absolute dimwit. I'm talking about your UA infiltration. 𝗵𝗃 has already written your recommendation, so I suggest you get going, unless you want to be late. I sighed out, hating my new schedule already if I was going to be forced to wake up at 6:30 a.m. just to go to a dumb school to get information. Isn't Toga pretty young? She'd be able to get the info we need better. My quirk isn't exactly meant for stealth operations, really. Toga's already a recognized villain and she can't easily just get a faculty member's BLD. As you've noticed, she's effing insane. Just go, you brat. 𝗵𝗃 finally said, and I sighed once more, lengthening it dramatically. Fine. I'm going. After a quick breakfast of toast made by our league's own 𝗵𝗃, I rushed out the door with my new uniform on, including my bag of school necessities. I ran along the street, resisting the urge to go into just one house and get a kill. I had to stay focused on being 𝗵𝗃 for the next couple of weeks, until the information the league needed was acquired. When I got to the school, I looked up at its enormous size, surprised at how big a mere high school was. Walking in, I grabbed my schedule and saw my room was Class 1A for the hero course. Upon arriving at Class 1A, I immediately felt out of place, being a girl who started classes later than everyone else. I spoke lowly, stalking over to the empty seat they had set up for me. I could already pinpoint the personalities and characteristics of most of the students in the class just by looking at them and how they reacted to my entrance. For example, the raging hedgehog that seemed to hate that there was a new classmate around. All right, class, stop staring like idiots. This is 𝗵𝗃𝗏/N. She got in through recommendation, but she joined late due to family issues. The raven-haired teacher said, I'm Mr. 𝗧𝗏𝗿, your homeroom teacher. Go ahead and take a seat. We'll be heading to a rescue facility tomorrow, so be prepared for that. I nodded and headed to sit down, taking out the needed supplies to study. I couldn't help but notice the gaze of a green-haired boy who sat next to me. Turning to him, I spoke with a false smile, deciding it would be best if I put up a kind, friendly front to gain trust. Hello, I'm 𝗏/NY/N. It's nice to meet you. The boy blushed, most likely a bit awkward, and held out his hand. He seemed 𝗵𝗃𝗏. He stuttered out, and I shook his hand. I wonder what his quirk is. I thought, looking him over. Soon, 𝗧𝗏 started the lesson, and I turned my attention towards the front. Later on, Mr. 𝗧𝗏 called me over to talk before lunchtime. I know you're joining on late recommendation, but we already got your costume designs and had them made. Your quirk? It's a gas-like one, isn't it? He asked, and I nodded. 𝗏/NL/N, her quirk, toxic. 𝗏/N can emit gases with different effects from her body, usually harmful. Her blue gas causes unconsciousness, her green gas causes internal damage, red gas causes eventual death, pink causes internal healing, purple gas causes fatiguing, yellow gas causes temporary paralysis, and her white gas just serves as a smokescreen. However, if she breathes too much of her own gas in, even the pink gas will cause her to become physically weak. At UA, 𝗏/N keeps all but her green, pink, and blue gases a secret in order to hide her true identity as the villain Lady Toxic. Well, go try on your costume, see if the measurements are right. You'll need it for the rescue training tomorrow. The monotone man said, and I grabbed the costume, heading to the locker room to try it on. Imagine that as your costume, but with your eye color/hair color/body type. The costume fit me like a glove, and I was very pleased with it. It's like my one back at the league. This one seems a bit more advanced though, since it was made by professionals. I think I'll keep it even after they figure me out. I undressed and dressed back in my uniform, rushing to the lunchroom to get myself some food before next class. I didn't want to be starving, or I wouldn't be able to concentrate. Time skip. When we returned to class, Mr. 𝗳𝗍𝗄 briefed us on what was going to go on at the rescue facility the next day. He also told us we needed to pick a class rep. Everyone got one vote, and while most people, including me, since I didn't know anyone there, used it on themselves, some people voted for others, resulting in a black-haired girl named 𝗳𝗍𝗄 getting a spot as the co-rep and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 getting a place as the official representative. I was actually kind of happy with this outcome, since 𝗧𝗵𝗃 seemed like a good guy. "Hey, congratulations on your new position, 𝗵𝗃𝗲," I said with a small smile, waving him over. He nodded slightly nervously. "Yeah, I honestly didn't expect to get any votes. I wonder who voted for me," he said while tapping his chin. I shrugged. "Hey, whatever. You're class rep. Don't get hung up over who picked you and who didn't. Just accept it," I said nonchalantly, and he sighed. "I guess so, L/N. Thanks." He smiled a bit, and I blushed slightly, covering my face with a hand. "No problem." What the heck? Why was I blushing at this guy? All he did was smile and say thanks. Also, you can just call me Y/N. I'm not really into all those formalities. "Oh, I'm sorry. Y/N it is then." The green-haired boy stuttered, and I laughed a bit. "But can I call you 𝗳𝗍𝗄𝗏? It seems to fit." I suppose," he said with another smile, and I nodded, smiling back. "𝗳𝗍𝗄𝗏 it is. Your POV." The very next day, I was heading to school bright and early again. I kept in mind what 𝗵𝗃 shared with me about their attack on the USJ. Despite my family of villains attacking, I had to still pretend I was a student. My infiltration of youth couldn't end after only one day. That would make the whole mission utterly useless. A fail. My shoes clicked along the sidewalk as I walked towards my destination, but I stopped as I heard the sound of a snotty woman's voice coming from an expensive-looking apartment. "I suppose just one. I'd be early to class anyways," I said to myself. Opening up the bag I had, I pulled out the black gas mask I wore with my costume. It had been too long since I had gotten a kill, and I was itching to hear pain-filled screams once more. I went around the back and kicked in the window, the woman upstairs' voice halting. She spoke once more, saying she heard something downstairs. I climbed into a cabinet after pushing out the fancy wine glasses, activating my quirk. A green gas filled the cabinet and slowly seeped out the cracks, and the woman noticed, opening it with disgust on her face. It quickly morphed into pain as she inhaled the smoky-smelling gas. "Toxic gas, a part of my quirk?" I said under my breath as the woman choked, falling to the ground in pain, screaming as the gas caused harmful internal damage. "It'll hurt pretty bad. But I've got classes to get to." I noticed that the screams of the woman must have caused the neighbors to call the cops. "I hate to cut this short, ma'am, your screams are so appealing. I much prefer them to your actual voice. But the police will be arriving soon." With that, I activated the red gas, and the green gas fanned out as the red came in. The woman tried to hold her breath, but I just scared. "You can't hold your breath forever," I said with a small giggle as her lungs eventually gave in and she completely collapsed, dead from the fatal gas. Sirens approached. I could hear them clear as day. I escaped through the back window and took off my gas mask, deactivated my quirk, and put my gas mask away. I then headed off to school as if nothing happened, the police yelling as they tried to resuscitate the woman to no avail. Time skip. Once at school, there were reporters swarming the front. I tried to get past, but they continued to pester me with questions. Instead of listening, I merely used a small amount of my sleep gas, the reporters falling over, unconscious. They'd only be out for a few minutes max, plenty of time for me to get in without getting barraged with their questions. In class, I patiently listened to the lesson, and once lunch came, I headed to the cafeteria as usual. I saw 𝗧𝗵𝗄 approach me and gave him a small smile. Before the alarms went off, I looked around in alarm, and 𝗧𝗵𝗄 did too. What's happening?" A third year brushed past me, and said, "It's a level 3 security breach. It's never happened in my years of being here." I was shocked, but pulled Izuku along to the exit, and he followed me like a lost puppy. We soon came to a hall flooded with kids, and tried to push through, until the black-haired glasses boy flew through the air onto the exit sign. "Students, do not be alarmed. It was simply the media who came to ask questions. No one is at risk." I sighed out, thinking the villains had gone forward with some other crazy plan of attacking the school itself. Though, now that I think about it, how did the media get into the school all on their own? The school's security was so tight, not even 𝗵𝗲𝗿 could have probably breached it. I tapped my chin, thinking maybe this was part of the USJ attack. Well, at least it wasn't anything major. Izuku said, and I nodded in agreement, still lost in thoughts. "You okay, 𝗬𝗏? "Oh yes, sorry. I was just thinking." "Sorry, Izuku-kun, let's go eat lunch." Time skip, after lunch, and a bit of debate, Izuku had handed off his position of class rep to the black-haired kid, whose name I came to find out was 𝗵𝗵𝗍𝗂. "Do you really think that was the right thing to do, Izuku-kun?" The boy nodded, looking over at me with a blush still. "I do. Ida's really responsible, and he's a natural-born leader. I don't really have any leader qualities, to be frank," he said with a small laugh, scratching the back of my head. I then smiled at him and spoke once more. "I think it was really good of you to do that." Midoriya blushed more, and bowed his head slightly. Thank you." Soon after, we headed out to the bus, where Ida was already commanding that we got into 2 straight lines to board the bus. Izuku and I stood beside each other, sweat dropping at the sight of him. Well, he sure is taking on the role of leader, 𝗵𝗃𝗏. We thought simultaneously, and once the bus arrived, despite Ida's protests, everyone rushed on. When we were heading to the UE, Ida was despairing in his seat. It was an open layout bus. There, I said with a small laugh, patting his back slightly. "It's admirable that you're taking your position so seriously." The mature black-haired male nodded, bowing his head. "Thank you, 𝗬𝗏𝗏. I appreciate your words of reassurance." Authors POV. There was more banter in the bus as you guys drove off towards the USJ. You, however, were beyond exhausted from your new morning schedule and that you had stayed up extra late the night before. Eventually, your head lolled to the side slightly, and you fell asleep. Your head happened to fall onto a certain green-haired male's shoulder. As you began to snore softly, your eyes shut. The boy known as Izuku blushed darkly as he slowly looked over to see a girl's, face, very close to his. She fell asleep on my shoulder, he thought, but blushed even brighter after that, covering his face. "Ooh, does our very own Midoriya have a crush?" Kirishima asked from his own seat, and Izuku frantically tried to shush him, not wanting to wake the girl. A few other students oot at the poor boy, and he hid his face in his hands, never wanting a bus ride to end more than he did that one. Kirishima gave Midoriya a teasing smirk, and with a waggle of his eyebrows, turned back to whatever he was doing prior to teasing the freckled boy. Izuku looked back over to your sleeping form once more, before falling asleep himself a bit later, the bus ride still a bit far from over. Your POV. I awoke about 45 minutes later due to our arrival at the rescue training facility. I lifted my head slightly and felt a small weight on my shoulder, seeing Izuku's sleeping face. I must have fallen asleep, and he must have fallen asleep on top of me, I thought, letting out a tiny chuckle as I shook the boy gently. "Hey, Izuku-kun, wake up. We're here." I whispered to him, and he bolted up, blushing as he saw me. As she whispered in my ear. The boy thought with a dark blush and nodded. Thank you 𝗬𝗏𝗏. "Let's head on in," he said, and I nodded. Once we had entered, I saw an all-too-familiar spacesuit. Pro Hero 13, the hero who, in the past, had managed to annoy and piss me off with her ability to SCK in my gas and save my targets. My eye twitched slightly, but I hid any sign of dislike towards her. She explained about the USJ, with everyone making the connection to Universal Studios Japan with the shortened name. I yawned as she went over everything and then stopped. 13, I need to use the bathroom. I said, raising my hand. Of course, right down these stairs to the left. You should see it. I headed down them and behind the bathroom, and 𝗵𝗃 immediately came to my side. Begin the infiltration, All Might isn't here yet, but there's no time to waste. I said in a hushed voice, and the shadowy man nodded. Heading back to the class, I waited 1, 2, 3 minutes. And then the villains began to appear. I pretended to act as shocked as everyone as they walked through the portal. 𝗳𝗍𝗵𝗲 put his hand out and yelled, "Don't engage them. 13, contact the other teachers. I'll take care of them." I contained a smirk, knowing the raven-haired man wasn't nearly good enough at fighting in the open to take on all of them, even if they were random small-time villains. Soon, I felt 𝗵𝗃𝗁's presence again, knowing he would have to teleport me as well. After his brief words, he sent everyone to different locations, with me landing at the shipwreck zone with the grape kid, frog girl, and 𝗧𝗵𝗃. I rolled to lessen the impact of my landing as I landed on the boat, seeing 𝗧𝗵𝗃 in the water with villains going to attack him. I had to restrain myself to command them to back off. 𝗧𝗵𝗃. I yelled, about to hop in, when the frog girl rushed in and saved him. I breathed a sigh of relief as they all landed on the ship. That was close. Thanks, 𝗬𝗍𝗍. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said, and the frog girl, apparently named 𝗬𝗍𝗍, spoke. I told you to call me 𝗬𝗍. Alright? Sorry about that. 𝗧𝗍𝗍 scratched the back of his head, while the perverted little grape boy managed to grab a hold onto my melons. Wow, L/N. You've got pretty big, ACK. I had a dark blush and an angered expression on my face as I smacked the boy off. I might as well toss you in to be killed by those shark villains, you nasty perv, I yelled, covering myself. He immediately looked terrified, and I looked over the edge at them, not noticing 𝗧𝗍𝗁's equally angry expression at Grape Boy. 𝗵𝗃 walked to the edge, seeing the villains that were waiting in the water. They must be nervous to come up here and fight us because they have quirks that are utilized in water. Plus, they probably don't know what we're capable of, he said, and I nodded. When I did, he turned to me next. Y/N, if I can ask, what is your quirk? I stopped and rubbed my arm nervously. I'm able to create gas from my body. My eyes change color depending on the color and effect of the gas. I explained as best I could. I decided to lie a bit. I can only heal internal damage with my pink gas, 'cause internal damage with my green gas, and put people to sleep with the blue gas. But inhaling too much of my own gas can make me physically weak, or even pass out. The boy gaped at me. Wow. That's a really cool quirk. Whoa, but wait. Isn't there that super hot villain lady who can do basically the same thing? Grape Boy said, and I froze, before 𝗬𝗍𝗍 saved my butt. No, 𝗵𝗃𝗲, you're thinking of Lady Toxic. She kills people with a red gas, and tortures them with another one, remember? I guess, the boy supposedly named 𝗵𝗃𝗲 said, and I nodded, waving my hands. Why yeah, people always tell me about how much my quirk is similar to hers. But I don't share any relation to her. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 nodded. I've seen Lady Toxic on TV before, but always just a small glance that the news reporters could get before she hides herself with her smokescreen, he said, and I nodded. Well, we shouldn't be focusing on villains that supposedly aren't here. Let's focus on how we're going to. I was cut off as one of the villains chopped the boat in half. I gasped as I stumbled and fell off the side, hearing them yell, Y/N. I slipped from the slick metal bars I was holding onto and fell into the sea below. Well, guess I have no choice. I shouted, ripping off my sleeve as I fell, my eyes changing into a bright blue. Guys, if you see blue gas, don't breathe it in. I shouted up to the three still on the boat. Landing with a splash in the water, blue gas surrounded me. The villains who attempted to come after me had mostly been put to sleep, but a few were still awake from breathing underwater. I looked up to signal that I was okay. Until a fish-like villain yanked me underwater. He held me there and spoke. Let's test those lungs of yours, kid. See how long you can last in MY territory. He laughed and I struggled for breath. I felt my vision fading as I finally released air and in water. This is it. I thought, the water suffocating me. Just as I was about to pass out, there was a large whirlpool, and I was being grabbed from the water by Midoriya. Tsuyu had grabbed onto Mineta and Izuku and jumped away, and Izuku had managed to grab me to save me from the whirlpool with the 𝗵𝘃𝗃 sticky grapes he takes from his head. Well, at least I assumed they were sticky since the still awake villains were in the middle of the whirlpool, stuck together. "You guys are amazing," Tsuyu said, and I looked over at her, Izuku worriedly looking at me as I hung limp in his grasp. When we got to land, the green-haired boy shook me worriedly, and I coughed up water. Thank you, Izuku. I would have suffocated had you not grabbed me. I coughed, and he placed a hand on my back. "Are you sure you're okay?" he worried. "I'm fine," I said, getting the last of the water out of my lungs before turning my head to the fight. We all crouched down, out of sight as 𝗳𝗍𝗄 fought off villain after villain. Tomura stepped forward, and Kurogiri returned to his side, stating that a student escaped. I scowled slightly after overhearing the news. It must have been 𝗳𝗍𝗄𝗃, I thought, thinking back to how 13 advised him to run for help before we were teleported. However, all of a sudden, the ground shook as Tomura brought forth the 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃. That's right, he was talking about bringing the most powerful one for the attack. The disgusting beast let out a loud cry, and I watched as it slammed 𝗳𝗍𝗄's head into the ground. Knowing I had to put up a front, I ran forward, giving Tomura a wink that said, "I'll be fine. It's a way to gain trust." "Mr. 𝗳𝗍𝗄," I cried out in a fake worried tone, activating my sleep gas for the 𝗵𝗃𝗄, though I knew it would have no effect. I heard Izuku yell for me to come back, but I didn't care. /and get out of here. 𝗳𝗍𝗄 choked out, and I once again didn't care. I just expected I would pretend to hold off the 𝗵𝗃𝗄, since I'm sure it was programmed with me as an ally. What I didn't expect was for the large bird-like beast to grab me and dig its claws deep into my abdomen and toss me aside. I coughed up BLD as I was flung, surprised and gravely injured. All I saw before passing deep into slumber was Midoriya's crying face as he ran over to me, holding my body. His words faded in and out of my mind. Y/N. Medical. Needs help. That's all I heard before everything went black. Authors 𝗵𝘃𝗄𝗃. The /C girl lay unconscious, Izuku Midoriya holding her limp form in his arms. There was no one there with a healing quirk, no way for them to get her help. As such, the boy had no choice but to remove his costume and wrap it around her wound to try and keep the BLD in. In absolute rage, the green-haired boy turned and powered up his fist using One for All. He aimed the punch at Tomura Shigaraki, who happened to be about to attack Tsuyu with his quirk. "Sms," the boy yelled, his fist forward. He managed to hit a target, but not his intended one. The punch landed right into the 𝗵𝗃𝗄, who had jumped in front of Tomura. The blue-haired man-child laughed, and 𝗵𝗃𝗄 began to approach Izuku to attack. All of a sudden, All Might burst straight into the facility, beginning to attack. Time skipped to end of fight, your POV. I woke up what felt like ages later, but I saw that we were still in the training facility. Izuku was back at my side, holding me close to him. He gasped as I awoke and I in pain. "What happened?" I got shot," I said in a pained voice, and the boy hushed me. "Shoo, save your energy. 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 got you. The big bird thing. You managed to distract it long enough to buy 𝗳𝗍𝗄 some valuable time and save him from any more pain," he said, and I looked up to the ceiling. "Really?" I said, and the teary-eyed Izuku shushed me again. I nodded a bit and closed my eyes, trying to rest more. Later on, I woke again. This time, we were back in the nurse's office. I knew from the white ceiling above and the feeling of the pillow behind my head. I sat up slightly, but winced and let out a small whimper, hearing a gasp from the doorway. Turning slightly, I saw a flash of green before I was embraced. I winced again, but my eyes widened a bit as I heard the voice of Izuku. "Why, you're awake. I'm so glad, we've all been worried," said the teary-eyed boy, and I pulled back slightly after returning the embrace. "Why would you be worried? I spoke to you just a few hours ago before resting again," I said, placing a finger on my chin. Izuku shook his head and looked into my eyes. 𝗬𝗃𝗏. You were out for 4 days. What? I couldn't rack my brain around it. For days. From a small gash from that bird brain. I shook my head slightly, and Izuku turned to the door. 1 second, 𝗬/N. Let me get the others. Soon, Midoriya had called in the other 1A students, even Mr. Aizawa and All Might. Suddenly, I was barraged with relieved voices and, "Are you okay?" Even All Might was near very overdramatic tears. Mr. Aizawa stepped forward and spoke, "L/N, what you did was brave. Stupid, but brave. Thank you. Dumb as it was, you saved me from potentially permanent damage." He said sincerely, and I looked at him and nodded. "I'm glad, Mr. Aizawa-sensei. But I'll be a bit more cautious about my actions. Thank you all for coming to see me," I said, giving a gentle closed-eye smile. Most of the students checked on me one last time before exiting, while Izuku and All Might stayed. I looked at them, confused, before All Might said something. "Izuku's here because he really cares about you - Q blush from Izuku, and I do care about you of course, young L/N. But I have a few questions." Worry flashed through me, but I hid it with a simple nod. Was he catching on to my deception? "Miss L/N." I held my breath without even realizing it. "That bird brain didn't damage your quirk in any way, did it?" I know Mr. Aizawa's was weakened, and I wanted to make sure. The man said in a worried tone, and I looked a bit surprised. Then I laughed a bit. "No, All Might, he didn't. My quirk runs through my skin. I'd have to have all my skin destroyed or peeled off to lose it," I explained, and the man nodded. "Good. But now for my other question." Izuku stepped in to ask this one. "L/N, how were you so confident when going up to use your gas on the 𝗵𝗃𝗏? Any normal person would have cowered in fear." All Might nodded beside him, and I froze. Making a joke to cover for myself while I thought of a heroic-sounding response, I raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh, so I'm not normal." The boy blushed and waved his hands. No. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that." I laughed as I cut him off. "Calm down, Izuku-kun." But my confidence when facing it. For some reason, it disgusted me how easily the lies slipped from my mouth to Izuku. I was confident because my sleeping gas has never failed before. And also, I couldn't just sit there and let Mr. Aizawa possibly die, or get hurt further. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. Izuku gaped slightly, but then nodded. I felt the same way. When Bakugo was being attacked by a villain, I felt that urge of not being able to just stand by. All Might cut in, and his actions there saved young Bakugo's life. I witnessed it. So, L/N, that was the partially right thing to do. "Next time, don't get hurt though," the joyous man said, and walked over to the door, opening it and poking his head in to finish his thought. "Feel better, young L/N, young Midoriya. Keep an eye on her. See you later." The man spoke as he exited, and I giggled lightly, not noticing Izuku blushing at my small laughs. Soon, Recovery Girl came in and began to shoo Izuku. "It's time for her to rest, she can't have visitors 24/7. Go on now," the woman said, and I gave the boy a small wave bye as he exited the nurse's office. I laid back in accordance to Recovery Girl's request, and closed my eyes, allowing sleep to take me once again. Your POV. I woke up after another long rest, seeing Recovery Girl above me, once again healing my wounds. I gave her a small smile and the woman smiled back before speaking. "Well, Miss L/N, your wounds seem to be all the way healed. That's why you were conked out so long, dearie. You should be able to do classes just fine," the kindly older healer said with a small pat on my arm. I thought about how my wounds were healed at the league. I was roughly bandaged up and maybe given painkillers if we had them. No one ever treated my wounds with a smile and a healing quirk. I shook my head slightly. I couldn't be thinking about that. The league was my family. I smiled once more and said, "Thank you very much, I'll get to class." I walked to class 1A with bandages around my torso, my school jacket on my shoulders along with the rest of my uniform on. When I walked in, I was greeted with a unanimous 𝗳𝗏𝗵𝗃. I gasped as several students came over to hug me, everyone saying things like, "We were so worried," or, "Are you all better now?" I smiled slightly, looking down. "Thank you all. Yeah, I'm good now. Recovery girl healed me," I exclaimed with a bright smile, and everyone breathed out a sigh of relief and happiness. I went to my desk and sat down after Mr. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 hushed everyone, and he looked up at me. 𝗳𝗏𝗃, "I'm glad you're all right," the man said simply in his monotone voice, before starting the lesson again. I stifled a small laugh. The super serious 𝗳𝗏𝗃 had actually shown a soft side. As the lesson continued on, I found my wounds aching less and less over time. Eventually, when school was done for the day, I packed up my things, finding that there was no longer pain in my abdomen. That recovery girl truly was a miracle worker. I felt a tap on my shoulder just as I was about to leave and turned, seeing Izuku standing behind me. "Hey, 𝗧/N, I'm really glad you're okay." I gave him a small grin. "Thanks, Izuku-kun," but I was cut off by the green-haired male. "But don't do anything like that ever again. You could have died, in fact, you were really close to death," he said in a concerned tone, and I laughed a bit. "It's okay, I'm fine. I lived, didn't I?" But I honestly didn't expect that bird brain to be unaffected by my sleep gas. He nodded, tapping his chin. "I know. He appeared to have nostrils in his beak, but maybe his senses were mostly destroyed from the overwhelming amount of quirks that were forced onto him. Maybe." Izuku trailed off as he began mumbling, and I sweat dropped, patting his shoulder. "Don't think too much into it, Izuku-kun. Anyways, I'm gonna head out. See ya," I said, giving a small wave as the boy waved back with the tiniest of blushes. I walked along the sidewalk back in the direction of the League's hideout, and once I arrived, I headed in to be faced with 𝗵𝗃𝗁. "𝗧/N, you have a mission to kill this pro-hero. His hero name is Yami, real name 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗁. He's an undercover hero who's been figuring too much out about us. And he could soon expose us. I would have sent someone else since you just got back from classes, but no one else can. He is currently at this address. He should be with his family. Kill them if you must, but attempt to only take his life," the shadowy man said, and I simply nodded. Going to my room, I checked the address one more time and memorized it, crumpling the paper and putting on my villain outfit. Clicking my gas mask into place, I immediately set out. Once I had reached the address, I heard a woman's voice inside, as well as a man's laugh. "Shigeki," I thought, and knocked on the door, already activating my paralysis gas. Yellow swarmed around me, and a man with short raven hair and a slight goatee answered. "Yes, what?" He stopped short as he fell to the ground, the gas already affecting him. He growled and glared at me, or tried to with his paralysis. "Lady Toxic," he attempted to say, and I looked down at him. My words came out in a rasp, my way of further covering my identity so no one could recognize my voice. "Your family won't suffer. Only you." Tried to struggle, use his quirk, that much was obvious. But it was too late as the red gas invaded his system. The woman, probably his wife, came over with a child in her arms. She gasped in horror, and I walked over to hold her back after deactivating my gas. "Inhale that and you'll die. I did not come to harm anyone but Shigeki-kai," my rasped voice said, and I walked out, the remnants of my red gas fading away as I exited, hearing the woman sobbing behind me. As much as I knew that woman must have suffered, I couldn't mourn for her loss. This is who I was. A murderer. Suddenly, a pro-hero. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗁 came from the shadows seemingly. I had managed to escape behind a building and hide, but just barely. Internal damage. It must have been that Lady Toxic. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗁 said aloud. "Wow, aren't I just a household name?" I thought sarcastically, before listening in again. "I'm sorry, ma'am. That villain has too powerful a quirk. I'm afraid 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗁 is dead." The woman's sobs continued, growing to pained cries as the child also began to cry. I sank to the ground where I hid, sitting with my knees tucked in. This is me. I thought. I am a villain. I kill for the League. I commit any crimes for the League. Everything I do is for the League. They took me in. They saved me when heroes abandoned me. This is me. As I stood, I thought of the kind of life I might have led had I decided to actually become a hero. Maybe I would have had real friends. Maybe even a family again at some point in my life. But right then, right there, I convinced myself that this was the only life for me. I would have no redemption from the pain I've caused, the crimes I've committed. I'm too far gone. I'm a villain. Evil. Bad, and the man I just killed. The reaction his family had was proof of just that. Your POV. Once again, I was sent on a mission. This time by the boss himself. As I walked down the streets in a black hoodie and baggy to hide my villain costume, I thought back to when he called me in. Flashback. I entered the extremely dark room, squinting to try and see anything if it was possible. I saw the glow of what seemed like a computer screen and made my way over slowly. Suddenly, a booming voice said, L/N. I straightened up, nodding my head. Yes, sir. I need you to go on a very special mission for me. The hero you must find and eliminate is no ordinary hero. I nodded my head once again, keeping quiet to listen to what he had to say. I wondered who the hero could possibly be. This hero is a teacher. The erasing hero, 𝗍𝗫𝗄𝗃. I froze up slightly at this. How in the world was I supposed to assassinate my teacher, the underground hero 𝗍𝗫𝗄𝗃? He was an assassin too, and probably more skilled than me. I nodded my head for the third time, knowing it would be best to just accept the mission. But I know this will not be an easy feat, but with our defeat at the USJ, it seems almost necessary that an asset like him is taken down. Understood, sir. I will make quick work of him. I promised, but secretly held dread in the pit of my stomach. 𝗍𝗂𝗍 was a smart man. If I failed, he may find out who I am. I had to get in and out whether I ended up killing him or not. Back to present, I finally reached the modest household of 𝗍𝗂𝗍. He must be in here. It's a weekend and this man never goes out. I thought. I grabbed my gas mask, but before I did, I sensed a presence. Deeming it nothing, I clipped my gas mask on and knocked on the door, already releasing red gas. The man walked out, not even breathing a whiff of it in before he tied his scarf tightly around his nose and mouth, deactivating my quirk with his own. I cursed. The famous 𝗍𝗫𝗄𝗃. You truly do live up to your name, don't you? I questioned, hearing a slight noise, sounding like someone struggling to hold their breath. I knew it. Someone must be watching. And the infamous Lady Toxic, your quirk is as flashy as ever, the raven-haired man said in his usual bored tone, and I sprung into action, tackling him. I leaned down and hissed in my altered, raspy tone, I know of your new weakness, 𝗍𝗫𝗄𝗃. I saw the USJ attack. He said nothing, but I'm certain his eyes widened underneath his goggles. You. I didn't see you there. Not all villains have to make some big, flashy appearance. I chuckled and smirked under my gas mask. I wonder how long you can hold your breath before your lungs give in. I spoke once more, punching his goggles, which temporarily stopped his quirk and allowed me to release the red gas around me. Give in, 𝗍𝗫𝗄𝗃. The man was about to succumb, when a feminine voice shouted, Mr. 𝗍𝗂𝗍. Suddenly, I was docked in the back of the head by what felt like a rock, causing me to get up to look for the distraction. Right afterward, I barely dodged 𝗍𝗂𝗍, who had attempted to grab and capture me. I spoke into a small radio I had brought to communicate with the League. I must make my escape. Mission failed. I sighed in annoyance, before running away, narrowly dodging any of Mr. 𝗍𝗂𝗍's scarves and hiding out in an abandoned building. I took off my mask with a sigh, setting it in my bag. I heard the boss's voice in my ear. You did well. If not for that distraction, 𝗍𝗫𝗄𝗃 would have been dead. Don't fret. That was excellent. He praised, and I smiled a bit. Thank you, sir. Next time I'll finish the job. I heard a rustling and then footsteps growing distant. I thought. The invisible girl must have followed me. She saw who I was. I put on my mask again and gave chase, but there was no way I was going to find her. I cursed again and again. They could believe her since my quirk. I'll go back tomorrow. I thought. I won't be caught. No way. With that, I stood, getting my hoodie and baggie on again to hide my appearance. I headed out of the building towards the bar, still silently cursing myself and that girl. What was her name? 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁. Whatever it was, she was my biggest threat as of now. The next day, I went to school as usual, but noticed a certain invisible girl with her body slightly turned towards me. I looked over at her and gave her a little wave with a smile, and she turned away. She knows, I thought, and wondered how many people she had attempted to tell. 𝗳𝗍𝗂 entered the room and looked over to me. 𝗳/N, I need to speak with you in private. Of course, Mr. 𝗳𝗍𝗂, I said, following him. 𝗍𝗂 looked questioningly at me, and I shrugged as if I didn't know what was going on. Once we were in a private room, the man sat me down and began to speak. 𝗳/N, a certain student aided me yesterday when I was attacked by the villain, Lady Toxic. I feigned shock. Are you alright, Mr. 𝗳𝗍𝗂? Especially after the USJ. I said, trailing off. He raised an eyebrow, and I could see his suspicion dissipate slightly. I'm fine. But 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁 claimed that she saw you with the gas mask Lady Toxic had. I raised an eyebrow slightly, but shook my head. Sir, I was at home cooking dinner before my sister got home from her job. I lied through my teeth, but he seemed to buy it. Does your sister have raven hair like you? And gold eyes? She could potentially be Lady Toxic if she has a similar quirk. I pretended to think for a moment. No, sir. Her eyes are more greenish than gold, and her hair is a bit of a light gray. I'm sorry, I said, and he sighed. Well, thank you, 𝗳/N. If you know anything about the possible whereabouts of Lady Toxic, tell us immediately. She's become more of a prominent threat as it seems the League is sending her on more and more missions. Head back to class, I'll join you in a moment. I nodded. Thank you, Sense. I'll report any info I find. I spoke and got up, smoothing my skirt and heading back to class. When I sat down, I shot a small, cocky smirk to 𝗬𝗏, who growled in turn. A lot of the students seemed to sense the tension between us. 𝗍𝗂 walked over to me. Hey, 𝗬/N. What did Mr. 𝗳𝗍𝗂 want to talk about? I shook my head slightly at his question. It was nothing, mostly about tests and scores and such. It's fine, 𝗳𝗂𝗁. I smiled brightly at the boy, who blushed in turn. All right, but if you need anything, talk to me, all right. Will do, 𝗍𝗂. The boy walked back to his desk, looking over to the girl with 𝗵/C hair and 𝗵/C eyes. 𝗍𝗂's POV. She's definitely hiding something. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, it seemed fake. Maybe there's something going on that's bugging her. Maybe she's hurt. What if someone hurt her? I shouldn't pry. I don't want to get into her personal business. Still, it seems weird that she's very tense with 𝗬𝗏. Your POV. I watched as Mr. 𝗳𝗍𝗂 walked back in moments later, looking around at everyone. Okay, everybody. I think it's about time I announced the start of the annual U8 Sports Festival. Cheers were heard around the classroom. Even I had seen the festival on TV. It was a huge event. But wasn't you just attacked by villains? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 asked, biting his nails in fright of the possibility of dying. U8 wants to continue on and host the festival to show that we have fully recovered from the attack. Mr. 𝗳𝗍𝗂's bored voice spoke, and I nodded my head in understanding. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, don't you know how important the festival is? 𝗍𝗂 asked, and the great pervert nodded, a fretful look still on his features. Yeah, I just don't want to get murdered. I laughed slightly at this. Don't worry, Grapehead. I'm pretty sure the villains are smart enough to not attack you when so many heroes are gathered. 𝗳𝗍𝗂 nodded. Exactly. All of them would be detained in seconds if they tried an attack. Plus, we're upping security this year. Anyways, you'll all be participating, so train hard, and don't make the first years look bad. Everyone got super excited after that, going over their training regimens and how they'd prepare. I, for one, planned intense workouts so I wouldn't rely on my quirk as much. I had plenty of physical strength, but no harm in training more. As everyone cheered over the festival starting, I didn't notice a pair of malachite eyes staring at me, still pondering over what the conversation between 𝗳𝗍𝗂 and I could possibly be. Warning: this chapter is sort of filler with a fluffy 𝗍𝗂 x scene, so sorry if it's shorter. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃. After school, everyone was still chatting everyone else up about the upcoming sports festival. I understood how big of a deal it was, but I still didn't get why everyone was still this excited. I walked down the sidewalk, putting some headphones in and playing a playlist of my favorite songs to block out the chatter of the students. Once I reached the bar where the league hid, I explained to them my training regimen. "Just don't overwork yourself," 𝗵𝗃𝗃 said, and I nodded with a small smile. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 patted my shoulder, making sure he didn't touch his palm or all 5 of his fingers to me. "Don't disappoint us, kid." "I won't, promise." I smiled again, this time to 𝗵𝗃𝗃, whose lips turned up just slightly before he put his father's hand back on his face and walked away. I left shortly after, jogging in a sports bra and shorts. It didn't help that it was a hot day, but I'd manage. After a calm, lengthy jog, I headed to a nearby park to do my workout and quirk training. The day had begun to get colder, and I cursed that I didn't think to check the weather as the cold air nipped at my skin. I did, however, have a thin jacket that I could use for the smallest bit of warmth. I jogged to a nearby coffee shop, Café Andréini's, and stepped inside, sighing as the warm, cozy building embraced me. I quickly walked up and ordered a small coffee/hot cocoa, sitting down once I had them take my name. I stretched out in a comfy chair by the window, setting my jacket down beside me and looking out as people walked past, some entering the shop, some leaving. Soon, I heard a voice beside me. "YY/N?" it questioned. I turned to the source, seeing none other than 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗃. I turned my entire body once I recognized him, giving him a bright smile. "Hey, 𝗬𝗂𝗁. Come, sit down with me," I said, motioning towards the seat. He smiled back, but squeaked once he noticed my attire. "YY/N? It's F freezing out, and you're in. That's," he exclaimed with a dark blush, and I laughed sheepishly, scratching the back of my head. "About that?" It was really hot earlier when I was training, but suddenly the temperature dropped. This was closer than home, so I figured I'd stop by for a coffee/hot cocoa. He nodded slightly, cheeks still flushed as he sat down. "So, you must have a pretty intense training regime?" 𝗧𝗂𝗃 asked nervously, and I noticed he was trying not to let his eyes wander. "Sort of. My quirk isn't very physical, so I mainly train to be able to release more and more gas before I get exhausted and weak. I'm already physically fit," I explained, and he nodded. "But you, on the other hand, must really have it rough with that quirk of yours." He scratched the back of his head and nodded. "Yeah, it's very intense." I grinned. "Well, I'm sure you're gonna do great in the festival, 𝗬𝗂𝗁." Before he could thank me, I heard my name being called. "That's me, be right back," I said in a sing-song voice, walking animatedly over towards the counter to get my coffee/hot cocoa. When I came back, 𝗧𝗂𝗃 had also gotten his coffee from another counter. We sat down and chatted for a while longer, before the boy stood up. "It was really nice talking to you, YY/N, but I should get back to my tea training again," he said with a small smile. "Of course. See ya la." I was cut off as the retreating boy tripped on the chair leg. My quick reflexes kicked in and I caught him before he fell, blushing slightly as he fell into my arms. The boy turned bright red and got back up again, with me checking if he was okay. "𝗧𝗂𝗃, are you okay? Are you injured?" I asked worriedly, to which the boy responded, "No, I'm fine." I sighed out. "Be careful, I won't always be around to catch you." I giggled and he smiled back, still red in the face. "See ya around, Y/N." With that, he jogged out the door. I sat back down with a blush, cupping my cheeks. Why was I so flustered? He's just a friend. Convincing myself of the latter, I finished my drink and headed out to continue working out. The sports festival was nearly upon us. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃. The day of the sports festival was here. Unfortunately, to make sure no one got any unfair advantages and to make sure we all showed our raw potential, hero costumes weren't permitted. I wasn't too disappointed, as mine was a mere black outfit with my gas mask. As long as I didn't breathe in excess gas from my quirk, I'd be fine. Once I got to the waiting rooms with everyone else, I immediately sat next to 𝗧𝗂𝗃. He was really my only friend here. After a few minutes of playing with a strand of my own hair, I heard someone clear their throat to my right. I turned, seeing 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 standing up. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, he spoke in his usual boring tone, and I perked up. What could this dude want with 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲? 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 immediately stood up to face the half-and-half boy. Why? What is it, 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃? 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃 stared 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 down, and then spoke. I'm going to win the sports festival. I glared at him slightly for threatening 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, but tuned out most of the conversation between them, hearing 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 stand up for himself later on, saying he would try his best too. Time skip. We were all in the middle of the Coliseum-like arena, each student separated into their different classes. Midnight stood in front of us atop a stage, a giant screen behind her as she explained how they would choose the first event. As the TV behind her glowed, it displayed a slot machine-like display, which started spinning. This will determine the first event, the 𝗵𝗃 hero said. What could it be? It landed on what seemed to be an image of an obstacle course. The screen then displayed the text, obstacle race. I sighed slightly to myself. My quirk isn't good for any sort of mobility, so I would probably have a really tough time keeping up with the others. Depending on the rules, I could always take others out. There are no rules. No restrictions. As long as you keep inside the designated course path, anything goes. The raven-haired woman yelled. I smirked. This would be fun. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. Man, my quirk isn't the best for mobility. I can't risk using it in the beginning and immobilizing myself. I wonder how 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 will do. I don't think her quirk can help her too much with this either. As we lined up at the start, I turned to the 𝗳𝗏𝗃-haired girl, giving her a small smile before I saw the countdown overhead start. Everyone raced through the tight archway, people shoving past other people. I was smushed between two students from 1B, but I looked up in awe, holding my breath shortly after knowing the effects if I didn't. People started to drop to the floor, sound asleep, as a blue gas radiated from 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃's running form. Her eyes were a crystal blue. I didn't know they changed color. They're really pretty. I shook my head, running through the gas as I saw a few students using their quirks to evade it. Gotta. Holding my breath. I thought, nearly out of the gas. I hard as I escaped the blue mist, seeing 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 already in an early lead, her 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 bouncing behind her as she laughed at the students she incapacitated. She was. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, stop thinking like that. As she's your rival, and you don't like her like that. Right? 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. I continued to dash ahead, though I saw Bakugo blasting away my smoke and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 skating out of it while holding his breath. A few other students managed to get out, and some of them were waking up. Better get ahead quicker, I thought, and then saw a giant robot. There were way more than just one. 𝗳𝗏𝗃, I didn't consider something like this. My quirk has pretty much no effect against something that's non-living. The best I could do was use my agility to dismantle one and then hope the others are focused on other students. I leapt onto the back of a smaller robot that was directly in my path, finding its control panel easily and ripping out the wires. The hunk of metal and bolts broke down and became immobile. Using my opportunity, I ran ahead underneath the legs of one of the robots, seeing more students follow. Suddenly, the giant robot I had just ran under made a large groaning noise and fell backward. 𝗧𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, it was about to fall on me. I wouldn't make it. I then felt force shoving me forward and turned to see 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃. I coughed at the dust surrounding us, seeing the green-haired boy also coughing. He had saved me, pushed me out of the way of the robot. 𝗧𝗃𝗃𝗃, I exclaimed, helping him up. Thank you. The boy nodded, flushing slightly as I helped him. It's no problem, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. I couldn't just let you get crushed. He chuckled slightly, before running ahead. I flushed as well as I watched him rush off, but shook my head and continued. I had fallen considerably behind from first place. The next obstacle was even more difficult. A rope path to reach the other side of a huge gorge. I sighed heavily, but thought to myself, my balance is impeccable from all my training. I may not get as far ahead as some others, but I'll have a significant advantage. I then ran over to the rope and began to half run, half tread across, making sure I was careful despite my speed. I could still fall, and there would be nothing to catch me. I wobbled slightly on the last rope, seeing 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 use his explosions to maneuver across easily. He nearly blasted me, and I cursed at him as he smirked. Jumping from my position, it seemed I was now in 5th place, some students passing me as I ran to the final stage. A minefield. Was there no obstacle that could give me some sort of advantage with my quirk? Taking careful steps to assure I wouldn't be blown to smithereens by pink smoke and sparkles, I was nearly at the end and in a considerably high placement considering my quirk wasn't accustomed to this type of match, when a ginormous explosion was heard behind me. I turned. It sounded a lot bigger and louder than the other ones were. The next thing I saw absolutely shocked me. It was Izuku using the hunk of scrap metal he apparently kept from the robots to fly through the air. By now, Todoroki and 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 were neck and neck for first, but Izuku managed to overtake them easily, using their faces to push off of and cause an explosion where they all were standing. I snickered at this, muttering, "You go, Izuku." Once I had reached the finish line, I saw the green-haired, freckled boy he had won first place, with 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 and Todoroki following. I could tell 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 was not very happy about this. I had come in 14th place, not too shabby. After all, I had made it to the next round. I walked over to Izuku, who was now sobbing with happiness at his accomplishment, and wrapped an arm around him. "Good job. Never knew you had it in ya." I grinned at him, and the boy blushed darkly at our contact, waving his hands. "It was really just luck," he insisted, but I merely laughed. My expression darkened as he turned away to talk with others. Why didn't he use his quirks? What was his quirks? After we all got a break before the next game was announced, I heard 𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗍 voice and stopped behind a corner, peeking my head out just slightly to spy. It was 𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗍 all right, but he was speaking with Izuku. Suddenly, the buff blonde man got a cloud of smoke around him, and in his place was what I could have mistaken for a skeleton. He waved his arms and said something about his time limit being up. I smirked darkly. So 𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗍 wasn't as mighty as he let on. This would be useful information for the league. If the man had a time limit, there was a limit to how much power he could use, which means he's not quite as strong as everyone believes. Before leaving from my eavesdropping session, I heard him mention something about Izuku taking his power. I gasped slightly, and turned the corner as I saw the skeleton like 𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗍 w his head around. "We should talk somewhere else, young Midoriya," the man said lowly, bringing the boy elsewhere. I laughed under my breath once he was gone. "So, symbol of peace. You've got your own secrets, don't ya? And now I know. Izuku has won 4. And you're getting weaker by the day. I'm sure the boss will love to know this. Your POV. I sighed and stretched my limbs out, heading out into the open once more. Seeing Midnight upon the stage, I headed over to the students gathered before her and stood right next to Izuku. "Nervous?" I whispered to Izuku and he nodded slightly, whispering back to me, "I was having a private conversation with someone, and I think someone eavesdropped. I'm worried, it was really personal." He muttered and I feigned worry as well. "OSHT. I hope everything's good," I said back, my voice hushed. I smirked internally, but deep down I did feel guilty. I had invaded the privacy of the only boy who I could call my friend. Oh, who am I kidding? I got valuable information that I can use to aid the league. I can't forget that heroes are the reason I'm a miserable villain, that I have to kill and commit crimes to keep a roof over my head with the others. But I don't know what I'll do when I finally betray Izuku and 𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗍. And everyone else for that matter. We'll see with time. Eventually, Midnight announced that we would be participating in a cavalry battle. I sighed out. Something else I probably wouldn't be able to utilize my quirk in, I thought, that is, until Midnight also announced this one would be anything goes. As long as the rider didn't touch the ground. She then spoke about the point values. Being placed 14th in the obstacle race, I didn't have a super high amount of points, but it wasn't super low either. I then saw that Izuku had 10 million points. Oh god, poor boy. He's going to be the main target. The minute I concluded that thought, I saw all of the other students eyeing him like they were hungry birds that had spotted a juicy-looking mouse. When Midnight told everyone to get into groups of up to 4, I immediately went to the poor, nervous boy, tapping his shoulder. 𝗬𝗂𝗁, I questioned, giving him a small smile. Would you like to team up with me? 𝗵𝗃𝗍 looked like he was about to strangle me in a hug, as he broke out into tears. Really, 𝗬/N. Why you do that? Even W and I have the most points. He wailed and I laughed slightly. You'd think your real quirk is crying waterfalls worth of tears. I muttered before brightening my smile further. Of course. That's what friends are for. Plus, we just have to run away the whole time anyways. I can help by putting people who try and come close to sleep, if you think you can hold your breath. He nodded vigorously, and then looked off to the side. Following his gaze, I spotted the bespectacled boy, 𝗳𝗵𝗲 was it? One moment, 𝗬/N. I think I have a potential teammate that could help in that regard. I nodded at him as he walked off, and then felt a rather harsh tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I spotted a girl with pink hair, flaxen eyes, and a ton of gear on her. Excuse me. She spoke in a slightly nasally voice. Are you by chance teamed up with anyone, 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 girl? Her voice seemed to raise significantly with her question, and I nodded my head slightly, covering my ears with my hands to block her yelling. Yes. I'm teamed with Izuku Midoriya, boy in first PLA. She cut me off immediately, a V-shaped smirk on her lips. Let me join your team. That's right. If I'm on the team with the first place member, people will notice my adorable little babies. Plus, I know your sleep gas puts everyone around you under its effects, does it not? I nodded my head slowly, interested to see what she would say. I noticed Izuku walking back over, and while he didn't say anything, I could tell Iida had rejected him. I placed a hand on his shoulder and gave him a reassuring squeeze, nodding towards the pink-haired girl as if to tell him, listen to her. I have these adorable babies I constructed to filter harmful gases. They're like super advanced gas masks. Except when you wear them, they blow the gas back out. So your sleep gas would pretty much block us like a shield. She laughed, and I tapped my chin. Sounds like a good plan to me. What do you think, 𝗬𝗂𝗁? I questioned, and he was nodding his head. Sounds great. That way you can use your quirk to assist us, and we won't have to hold our breath. There were 5 minutes left, and we still had to get one more member. Well, we didn't necessarily need one more member, but it would help since we were planning on having Izuku be the rider. He looked me in the eyes and said, I think I know exactly who this team needs. With that, he walked off to none other than 𝗳𝗂𝗵𝗲. I thought about it for a moment. Despite me having sleeping gas, we didn't have much offense or defense. I didn't know what the bird guy's quirk was, but I'm willing to bet it's something to do with one of those two. Izuku's a smart boy, and he knows what the team needs. Once Midnight announced the timer was out, we hoisted Izuku up, with 𝗳𝗂𝗵𝗲 in the front, me in the back left, and the pink-haired girl, whose name I found out was 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃, in the back right. We all had our gear on, and were ready to take to the air if things got hairy. I scratched my cheek, looking around at the other teams. I heard the 18+ heroine's voice ringing out across the stadium. 3. Start. As soon as the woman gave the word, people immediately chased after us. We took to the sky, and I surrounded us with sleep gas. As 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 promised, the gas surrounded us like a shield due to her. Babies. We landed far away from the other groups, and one that attempted to get close had gotten themselves out by inhaling my blue gas and allowing their rider to fall to the ground. I smirked, and I heard 𝗳𝗂𝗵𝗲 praise, excellent work, 𝐿/N. I nodded at him, and May immediately spoke up to Izuku, aren't my little babies fantastic? Yeah. Your babies are amazing. The green-haired boy praised her, and I looked away, a pang in my chest as the girl exclaimed a hasty, thanks? What was this feeling? I shook my head slightly, muttering, I'm the one that got that other team out. Izuku looked down at me in confusion, about to ask what I said before I cut him off. It's nothing. I spoke as we continued to run. Later on in the contest, we were cornered by 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 and his team. I saw the bespectacled boy's leg engines heat up, and I shouted out, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲. I was cut off as they rushed past us at incredible speed. I looked up to the 𝗲𝗏𝗃𝗃, and my eyes widened. His headband was gone. Come on. We have to win this. I shouted at my team, and we began to run towards 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃. At 30 seconds left, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 managed to get a headband by baiting out the half and half boy, though it ended up having too low a point value. I cursed under my breath and growled. One more try. I gritted my teeth, and we began running again, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 reaching his hand out. I felt power surge from his arm. He was using one for all to bait 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 again. The raw power radiating from him was so intense, and so close to snatching the headband, we all shouted out. That is, until we heard a voice ring out across the stadium. Time's up. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 fell to the ground, clenching his fist as he kneeled down. I walked over to May and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃, and the bird boy explained he had snatched another headband, assuring our victory. I walked back over as 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 rose, and listened closely to his words, May standing next to me. You guys. I'm so sorry I couldn't advance us. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 and I looked at each other, smiling and pointing to 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃. When he explained how 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃's distraction had allowed him to grab another headband and assure our advancement, the poor green-haired boy burst into tears, breaking the ground under him. I sweat dropped, taking his hand and pulling him out of his. Mini crater. Hey, we won. No need to cry. I said, trying to comfort him. He nodded, blushing as I embraced him and patted his back. Thank you/N, he said, a wide smile on his face. And good luck in the next event. I nodded to him, placing my hands on my hips and grinning back. You too. I'm going to beat you. I promised. So don't lose, got it? I want to face off against you. He grinned with determination and clenched his fist. Got it. Same goes to you then. Your POV. Walking out into the bright sun for the third time today, I stood among the 16 remaining competitors. I looked up at the 18+ hero as she announced the pairings for the battle tournament. My 𝗬/C orb scanned the screen, searching for my name. I wonder who I'd be up against. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 versus 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃. Ghastly versus 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃. My eyes widened just slightly, glancing over at the 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 hedgehog boy. He was looking around for his opponent. I took a deep breath, walking over to him. Oi, hedgehog hair. So you're the one I'm going against. The blonde turned to me with the ugliest expression I have ever seen, and spoke in an aggressive tone. What did you call me? I'm gonna effing crush you. I rolled my eyes, crossing my arms. Whatever. We'll see about that when the match starts. I said, matching his glare with one of my own, leaving him slightly stunned that I actually retorted as I walked away. I smirked to myself as he grit his teeth, strutting out with confidence. That was to mask how nervous I actually was. I knew I had a chance against him. I've done combat training my entire life and can dodge even the quickest of blows, countering them with my own. However, Bakugo was tricky. He seems like a bombs for brains dumbass, but he's not. He plans his attacks, calculates every move. I know this from 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. He would be a dangerous opponent. But if I can get in close or even get him to breathe in my sleep gas, I can incapacitate him and win the fight. Heading to the bleachers, I sat down next to some of my 1A classmates. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 was going up first, against a boy named Gshinso. I had no idea what his quirk was, but I have faith in the 𝗲𝗏𝗃𝗃. He's strong. I smiled to myself as I saw 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 walking onto the stage, the match beginning already. Wait, why was I smiling at the sight of him? Emotions. Once the match started, I saw Gshinso speaking to 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. It seemed to anger the green-haired boy, as he began to run forward and yell. But suddenly, he had a blank look in his eyes. Oh God no, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, wake the F up. I screamed, standing up. As soon as I saw Gshinso's mouth move, and saw 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 walking towards the outside of the arena, I knew exactly what the purple-haired boy's quirk was. It was obvious. Brainwashing. I continued to yell down at Midoriya, watching in horror as he walked to the edge, getting closer and closer. Izuku, I haven't fought you yet, don't you dare lose now. I sensed an energy radiating from him, and suddenly, he was back. And just in time too. He was barely still in the arena. But his finger was broken. Did he break it to get himself back? That seemed to piss Shinso off. I laughed to myself, muttering, "Go get him," as I saw Izuku absolutely dominate and slam Shinso out of bounds. Everyone cheered as Izuku stood, the winner of the match. I got up from my seat and jogged down to where I assumed his waiting room was. Since it was also my assigned waiting room, I decided I would chill there until my match. No reason to watch anyone else's match. Said green-haired boy soon entered as I predicted, and once he saw me he ran over. 𝗳𝗵𝗄𝗏, I smiled brightly at him, pulling out a chair for him to sit in. "Hey Izuku, amazing match. Though, you did get your broken finger fixed, didn't you?" The boy laughed sheepishly, shaking his head. "No, not yet. I thought you might be here, and wanted to see if you saw my match. But I guess I got my question answered for me already." He grinned brightly. My God. That smile. It's so precious. My cheeks flushed and I turned away slightly. "Why yeah, well, whatever. It was a good match," I said, and felt my cheeks turn even redder. Was I seriously turning all tsundere over this adorable sunshine boy? I noticed that Izuku smiled, but the smile held a slight amusement, as did his eyes. He found my actions amusing. I huffed slightly. "Hey, let's just go watch the matches, how about that?" Midoriya asked softly and I smiled back. Nodding slowly, I followed him back to the bleachers. We watched a few more matches. With each one that passed, I felt myself getting more and more nervous. Eventually, while Izuku was taking notes and mumbling over the sixth match, I left. Heading to my waiting room once again, I sat down. I sighed out, my nerves getting in a jumble. It felt like my stomach was twisting and curdling. Just as the seventh match was about to end, as I saw over the TV, Izuku ran in. 𝗧/N, he shouted, waving his notebook around. "What is it, Izuku-an?" I questioned, and he flipped through his notebook, then looked up to me. "I have a strategy on how you can beat Bakugo," and I cut him off as I put up a hand. "It's okay. You're truly wonderful, Izuku. But I can't rely on you for that. This is my match," I said with confidence, brushing past him and turning. "I'll see you next round." My voice was a lot darker than its usual slightly cheery tone before I headed to the stadium. Izuku's POV. I'm really worried about 𝗧/N. Kaken won't go easy on her. In fact, if anything, he'll go harder on her for how much she challenges him. Plus, I'm pretty sure he sees her as someone fierce, as everyone does. He won't underestimate her. Oh God, please be okay, 𝗧/N. Don't get hurt too badly. I silently prayed in my head as I saw her form walking out onto stage. Time for our eighth and final match for the first round. Coming up to the stage, we have the elegant young lady with toxic in her BLD, and the one I'm personally rooting for, it's 𝗧/NL/N. Present Mike cried out, and everyone in the stands cheered, me included. "Go get 𝗵𝗃/N. I shouted, hearing my classmates shout a few words as well. "Yeah, beat him down. You got this 𝗃/N. Show that jerkface what you're made of." After that, I saw Kaken walking out onto stage with the ugliest expression ever. And next up we have the explosive boy, her classmate, Katsuki Bakugo. More cheers, though a bit less than when 𝗧/N headed up. I heard my Neta shout behind me, "Beat her clothes off, Bakugo." I glared at the perverted boy, who shut up when he noticed my gaze, luckily. I then turned back to watch the match, but I was a bit conflicted. I saw 𝗧/N standing there. She really was so elegant. Appealing. I turned beet red. What was I saying? She's just a classmate. And why was I mad at my Neta for that? I usually ignore his perverted actions and comments. I need to focus on the match. I don't like her like that. Your POV. I stretched my arms as I heard Present Mike announce the two of us, preparing. As soon as I heard him scream, "Start," I instantly sent out a huge cloud of white gas, effectively smokescreening myself. I rushed in, prepared to put my hand over his nose and activate my sleeping gas so he'd have no choice but to breathe it in. My eyes widened as 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 began to use explosions to blow away the smoke. One of them hit me and I stumbled, brushing off the dust from my face and coughing. Gotta think about this. He's creating more of a smokescreen for me if he blows away my smoke too, so I have an advantage. If worse comes to worse and I can't get in close, I can just let off a last resort mega cloud of blue smoke, I thought. But if he keeps blasting me away, I cried out as I felt an explosion hit the side of my face, sending me off to the side. I stood up wearily, seeing the boy approaching. "I thought you did a ton of martial arts or some SHT. Why don't you show me that instead of your weak butt F quirk?" I growled and wiped the BLD from my nose. He was getting serious. Then so was I. I smirked, standing tall. I ran into some smoke, hearing 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 exploding it to find me, cursing me out. Removing my P uniform jacket and revealing my tank top underneath, I sent it at him, swiftly making my way behind him. I saw him blow it up and rushed in, blue smoke already forming in my palm. Before I could even touch him, he reacted and blew me up again, sending me tumbling. I stumbled a bit, unable to get up. I had to rest. But 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 had stopped. I heard booing. My ears were still ringing slightly, but he was getting chewed out by the crowd. Were they booing because he wasn't sending me outs? Do they think I'm that weak? I'll show them. I stood up once more, smirking at 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀. "You haven't seen anything yet?" I spoke, and the boy looked at me questioningly, aggression still on his face. I took a deep breath, and my eyes glowed a bright pale blue. I moved my arms out to the sides, and let out my best battle cry, blue smoke exploding from my body and surrounding him nearly like a tornado. Raging smoke cyclone. He would have to breath it in now. For good measure, I would rush in and prepare to throw him out of the ring. I won. As I ran in though, he did something I could have never expected. He let off the most monstrous explosion I've ever seen or felt, and sent all of the blue gas away, me flying away with it. I hit the ground and skidded, lying on my side. This couldn't be it. I grit my teeth, feeling more battered than I ever have. I looked up to him with an intense glare, though I was faltering. "No." I let out a hoarse whisper, feeling BLD ooze from multiple wounds across my body. I definitely had burns all over as well. "This isn't over." I wheezed, coughing up smoke. Something that happened when I reached my limit. I got back up one last time and faced 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀, who had come at me with explosions. He seemed a bit more strained. I reached my hands out and expelled a bit more blue smoke. Before I crashed to the ground, stumbling on my own foot, I cursed, trying to drag myself towards him. This, I can't lose. My vision started to go black. 𝗍𝗂𝗀𝗀 wouldn't have given up. Neither can I. I can't lose like this. I can't. 𝗍𝗂𝗵𝗃𝗲. I watched in horror, anger, fear, and worry as Midnight walked over to 𝗬/N, putting her hand up to signal for 𝗂𝗃 to stop as she checked 𝗬/N with her other hand. 𝗬/N had fought so hard, but she definitely managed to bring 𝗂𝗃 to some kind of limit. If she hadn't reached her own, she would have been able to finish him off. I felt angry. Angry that 𝗂𝗃 would go so far. Angry at how much she got hurt and how little I could do. I saw the girl's hand twitch. I prayed that she would get up, but also that she would stay down and not get herself injured further. Ida murmured, "Poor girl," to himself, but I couldn't respond. Ochako was also frozen in shock, as 𝗬/N's body seemed to tremble one last time, before she stopped moving. Midnight stood up. 𝗬/N is out of commission, she spoke in an almost disappointed tone. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗀 is the winner. Everyone in the audience cheered for said blonde-haired boy, who let out a 𝗬𝗲𝗁 and exited the stadium. I was worried sick for 𝗬/N. Not only did she sustain injuries from 𝗂𝗃, but she pushed herself to the limit of her quirk too. Though that last move was amazing. I pushed myself up from my seat and ran to the nurse's office, hearing Ida and Ochako call for me, as well as some of the other students. Once I had gotten in there, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 was already in bed. Recovery girl was standing there, turning to look at me. You know. The girl pushed herself because she admired you. The woman said, her voice sad. She wanted to win just like she said you always seem to do. She woke up for a brief moment to tell me. I covered my mouth and felt tears well up. I inspired her. Go on now. You've got a match soon. Recovery girl murmured. I need to perform surgery. Surgery. I cried out, trying to rush over to 𝗧𝗵𝗃, but the short medic stopped me. She'll be fine, 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗂. Her lungs are damaged though, as a result of too much quirk usage and breathing in too much of her own smoke. She needs surgery to have them fixed. I'll make sure she's fine. I nodded my head, reluctantly leaving the girl behind. When I heard that she took all those blasts, tried that hard, because I inspired her, I realized something important. I deny it, but I can't anymore. I have feelings for that appealing, kind, caring girl. She's so confident, and she radiates with positivity. She's super funny and has a good sense of humor, but most of all, she's there for me. No, I love 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, your POV. I woke up what seemed like a few hours later, seeing the bright white ceiling above me. Nearly my entire body was bandaged, and it ached in every possible spot. My muscles were sore, my skin felt like little needles were still pricked into it, and I had a massive headache. I groaned, unable to hear much but able to see just fine. I saw a mop of green hair next to my bedside, hearing muffled words. My hearing slowly faded in, and I definitely heard 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗂's voice. Aizu. I rasped out, and his eyes widened from what I could tell. Hold on 𝗧𝗵𝗃, I'll get recovery girl. She's gotta know you're awake. He spoke in a worried tone, calling for said elderly woman. I saw him then turn back to me. Are you feeling okay? I sighed out, my voice still raspy from overuse of my quirk up my lungs. I think I damaged my lungs and my entire body aches. Probably from the explosions. I laughed huskily, smiling at him as best I could. I'll live. Recovery girl can patch me up some more. The woman walked in with her walking stick, heading to the bedside immediately. How are you feeling, dearie? Well, I hurt all over. But I feel much better than during the battle, of course. I gave her a half smile, and she sighed. Smooch, she kissed my arm, and I instantly felt a lot better than I previously had. Never push your quirk like that again. You almost suffered permanent damage to your lungs, and you sustained multiple burns and cuts from that fight. Recovery girl scolded, lightly hitting my arm with her stick. I'm sorry, ma'am. I will have to perform surgery on you to fully fix your lungs, she murmured, and Izuku became visibly panicked at this. Surgery, you have to perform surgery on her, he asked worriedly, rushing over to me again. I grinned up at him. Hey, I'm a tough cookie, Izuku-kun. I can handle it. Reassuringly, watching as recovery girl pushed him out to prepare. All right, dearie, I'm going to put you under. I'll be done soon. She spoke and I nodded, feeling a small prick in my arm before I went unconscious. Time skip, I woke up maybe an hour later, but recovery girl wasn't in my room. No one was. Except a hooded figure sitting on the chair next to me. But I could recognize that mop of blue hair anywhere. Tamura, what the hell are you doing here? You're gonna get yourself captured. Calm down. I'm here to check on your progress. I've been watching. That demon green-haired brat seems really powerful. I didn't see him do much in any of the rounds. I tapped my chin when Tamura interrupted. You were in surgery while he did his match against the half-haired kid. He was able to create so much wind pressure with just a flick of his finger and destroy all of the kid's ice. It reminded me of All Might and it me off. I froze up slightly at the mention of All Might. There's no way he knew about Izuku being All Might's successor, did he? If he didn't, did I even really want to out Izuku to him? He's my only friend. Now tell me, did you learn anything useful at all? He hissed, getting impatient. Tell me before the old woman comes back and I have to pretend to be all friendly. I was thinking about what I should reveal to him. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗧 not happy when he doesn't get anything out of something in a short PRD of time, so I should at least come up with a lie or some other irrelevant information to make him leave me alone. What am I thinking? I should just out him now. I'm a villain, who cares what happens to him? I discovered that the half-haired kid is 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗧's son and that all might is weakening. That's all so far. The blue-haired man-child growled at me, but stood up, shoving his pale hands back in his pockets. It's something, but it's not good enough. Find out more and fast. He ordered me, and I sighed and nodded at him. With that, he left, apparently managing to not bump into anyone on his way back to the bar we resided at from the lack of noise coming from the hallway. I sighed out, feeling really bad. He told me about Izuku's match against Todoroki, meaning I had missed it. And I really wanted to cheer him on too. It can't be helped now, I guess. I should try and get some rest. Well, that's what I was going to do until I saw someone with familiar green hair being brought in on a stretcher. There's no way. What happened to Izuku out there? I hopped out of bed despite the pain in my abdomen, rushing over to him. Izuku! Izuku, are you okay? Oh my god, wake up, what the hell happened? I panicked slightly, about to take his hand when I saw his broken and bruised arm. It was completely messed up. I covered my mouth in horror. Oh my god. Recovery girl, what happened to him? I asked the woman who had walked in and gently pushed me back a bit. The woman sighed out. He shattered the bones in his arm and broke the other. He overused his quirk again. If 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗧 does this to his arm a few more times, he could sustain permanent damage. I gaped at her, trying to rush back over to the unconscious boy, but recovery girl didn't allow me to. Dearie, please go rest. You're still not fully recovered, and by standing so suddenly you've recklessly risked harming your lungs again. Also, I have to perform surgery on him. I sighed out shakily, feeling tears at the corners of my eyes as I laid back down, trying to rest. But I couldn't deny the worry I felt for him. For Izuku. Time skip, later on, once recovery girl stated she was done with surgery and left, I got up once more. I walked to his bedside and sat down at a chair, lying down with my head on Izuku's chest. Please, get better quick, Izuku-san. I mumbled, finally falling asleep. Your POV. I woke up with my head in Izuku's lap, who also happened to be stirring slightly. Blushing wildly, I sat up as quick as I could and backed away a little bit. Why? Why/N? What are you doing here? Izuku asked as he opened his eyes fully, blinking a bit as he looked at me. You got really badly hurt, which I am very mad at you for. I huffed out, crossing my arms and puffing up my cheeks. But I was also worried. You can't overwork your body like that or it'll break. Permanently. Well, I know that now, the green-haired boy said. Recovery girl said I got these scars on my hand from overdoing it. They're permanent. I instantly grabbed his hand, inspecting how it was now slightly crooked, and as Izuku had said, there were scars littering his hand and arm. I spent the next while scolding Izuku for his reckless behavior, and once I had gotten everything off my chest that I needed to, I sat down at his bedside and sighed out a very, very long sigh. I'm sorry, Izuku. What are you sorry for? I know you really wanted to win the sports festival to prove yourself. I'm sorry you had to go out like this, especially after sacrificing so much. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his non-F-up one, and said softly, It's okay, Y/N. I'm really not as upset as I thought I'd be. I helped Todoroki to realize an important part about himself, and that has satisfied any longing to win. In my books, I'd say getting through to him was just as good as a sports festival win. He smiled brightly at me, and I nearly had to squint at how bright this sunshine child was. So, I managed to squeak out, but shook my head and instead embraced the boy in a hug. I'm proud of you, Izuku. It's much more admirable to help someone out than to chase your own goals, and it takes a lot of kindness too. I said, giving him a smile back. The boy turned tomato red suddenly and covered his face, and I tilted my head to the side in confusion. What's wrong? Nothing, he shouted, waving his hands slightly. I laughed a little bit, patting him on the back gently. Get some more rest, 𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗏. I'll talk to you later, I said with another soft smile, getting up from my seat on his bedside and heading over to the door. But why/n, shouldn't you be resting too? I know you got out, but you got pretty badly hurt. He spoke with worry in his voice and eyes, looking up at me. It wouldn't be good to hurt anything again. I waved my hands in dismissal at his sentence, stretching out my limbs. I only felt a dull pain in my body, so I figured it was fine. Nah, don't worry about me. My broken ankle is fixed, and I only feel a dull pain from the whole ordeal. I'll be okay. He nodded, still looking slightly worried as I backed out the door and walked down the hall. He was sweet for worrying. Oh, I can't be thinking that way. He's still the enemy despite how kind he is. It's a front. He's just trying to be a hero like all those other fakes. I kept making up excuses in my head, trying to convince myself, but none of them ever seemed to work. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲. I watched as 𝗧/n walked out the door, sighing and laying back onto my cot in the medical bay. She was so strong and brave. Standing up even after being blasted by 𝗂𝗃𝗏. She faced him head-on with no fear, and she nearly won. I still couldn't get over my irritation with my explosive childhood friend, though. He had hurt 𝗧/n so bad in the battle. He couldn't even hold back a little. While watching the battle, I remember wanting to get down there and get 𝗧/n out of the way of his blasts. I wanted to help her so bad. It's not that I was underestimating her. She's powerful and can definitely hold her own. She showed everyone that in the fight. Her quirk was just a poor matchup against someone who can blow it away with one explosion. Flashback. I watched as 𝗂𝗃𝗏 sent 𝗧/n flying once again, seeing her skid on the rough dirt, cuts and gashes all over her. I grit my teeth, clenching my fists as well. I could feel my nails digging into my palms as I heard Mick's voice. And with another huge explosion, Bakugo sends 𝗨/n through the air once again. The poor girl. Still, she stood back up. Over and over again. I was secretly hoping that she would just lie down and give 𝗂𝗃𝗏 the win, but that's not who she is. 𝗧/n keeps fighting no matter what. That's just a quality that makes her amazing. I watched as she unleashed an incredible cloud of white smoke, blinding everyone. But what caught my attention more was the pained and strained yell she let out as she did. It must have hurt her to overdo her quirk like that. She must be planning to put her hand to 𝗂𝗃𝗏's nose and force him to inhale her sleep gas. I muttered, and Ochako nodded, also on the edge of her seat. Ida, despite usually being calm, seemed to be worried for 𝗧/n as well. I noticed a figure moving towards some small explosions trying to blast away the smoke. Yes. She's going to do it, she's gonna why. My thoughts were cut off as an absolutely ginormous explosion cut through the smoke, sending it into the air to dissipate. The female figure I saw rushing 𝗂𝗃𝗏 was also sent back. No. 𝗧/n crashed to the ground, her body sliding across the rocky floor of the arena. She was bruised, battered, cut and gashed, and I never wanted to help her more in that moment. She still tried her best to pull herself off the ground. 𝗂𝗃𝗏 got ready to strike her again, but 𝗧/n's eyes were dull. She wasn't going to be able to do it. Midnight had walked over and placed a hand on the girl's back, asking her if she was okay while holding up a hand to stop 𝗂𝗃𝗏 from attacking again. Then, the dreaded words came from Midnight's mouth. The words I wished I didn't have to hear. 𝗨/n is unable to continue fighting. Bakugo is the winner. I rushed to Recovery Girl's office immediately, where I saw 𝗧/n already lying on the bed after being carried off the stage, bruises and burns covering her S/T skin. Flashback over. I hope she doesn't continue to push herself too hard. I just want her to be happy and healthy, and become the hero she wants to be. Get ready for some fan service. You and your gal pals are going on a trip, smiley face. Your POV. Gathering a few clothing articles into a duffel bag as well as a swimsuit and other travel necessities, I smiled over at 𝗵𝗲𝗏. Don't worry, it's just a quick 2-day weekend trip. I'll be back in time to take any missions. Plus, girls let a lot of things slip. I bet I could get some good intel. Whatever you say, he muttered, glaring at me slightly. Just don't get too distracted. I nodded, getting the last of my things and heading out the door. I walked over to UH despite it being a Friday after school, meeting the girls there. Momo waved me over and I walked up to them all. "You guys ready for a nice relaxing vacation?" I exclaimed, putting my hands up. We all cheered, and 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃 spoke up. "I'm having my chauffeur bring us a limo so we can ride there comfortably," she said with a bright smile, clapping her hands together. My eyes widened, and everyone started to gasp in awe. "Wow, 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃, your family has it all." "Yeah, how loaded are you? Are there snacks in the limo?" All the girls looked to me after I asked about the food, and we all started giggling. "This is really nice. I've got to focus. This is a small vacation to gain intel on 𝗂𝗄𝗃, but that doesn't mean I can't enjoy myself with them a little bit." We continued to chat and laugh before a fancy black limo slowed to a stop in front of the school. We all oot and ahh'd at the sight, a man in a suit stepping out to open the door for us. "Well, let's go," Momo said, and we all piled in, continuing to chat amongst each other. "𝗵𝗃𝗲 𝗵𝗃𝗲. I watched as the ladies of our class headed into 𝗂𝗄𝗄𝗃's limo, turning to 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃. Usually I'd say we keep this to ourselves. But it would be cruel not to tell the other guys when such a rare opportunity presents itself. We should be courteous to our fellow men after all," I said with a small laugh. 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 nodded at me, placing a hand on his chin. "It would be cruel indeed. Let's text them to meet us here now." I overheard the ladies. I smirked. "They're going to the Sakura Hot Springs Resort about an hour away from here. We should be able to get a ride somehow." My electrical friend nodded once more, and we began to text the guys one by one. There was no way we'd miss out on seeing the hot bods of our female classmates. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃. I was lying down in my bed, staring up at one of my All Might posters, when I felt my phone buzz. I sat up and saw a text from 𝗵𝗃𝗃. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, meet me in 𝗵𝗃𝗃 at the front of the school. I sighed out at his terrible spelling, but texted back anyways. "Okay, I'll be there in 10. How come?" 𝗵𝗃𝗃, we have a surprise for the guys, winky face. "I'm worried about what that surprise asterisk is." 𝗵𝗃𝗃, just 𝗵𝗃𝗃. I sighed again, getting my stuff and heading over. Once I made it, I saw some of the other guys already there, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 as well, of course. "What is this all about, 𝗵𝗃𝗃, 𝗵𝗃𝗃?" Ida questioned, making wild hand motions as usual. "Did you summon us here for training, perhaps?" The two gave the other a mischievous grin, and I felt myself growing worried. Why did I feel like this was something perverted they wanted us to be a part of? "Well, I was thinking we could take a guy's vacation," 𝗵𝗃𝗃 said suddenly, and we were all instantly hit with surprise. "Just to hang out with each other and get a much-needed break. We booked a place at the Sakura Hot Springs. I hope that underneath this surprisingly good intent, you're not bringing us to a hot springs to see girls," Ida said, glaring at the two. They shook their heads, and I could nearly see the little halos that appeared over their heads. "No, sir. We only want to get away for a weekend trip." The Ravenet sighed, but nodded. "I suppose we could. Do we have a bus taking us there?" I thought about that too. How could the two of them have possibly gotten us a ride there? 𝗵𝗃𝗃 gave us a thumbs up. "Taken care of, my fellow men." Slowly, all of the guys came to the campus. Even Kakin. Even if Kirishima had to convince him to come. We explained to them the plan, and all the guys except Kakin were in. Kirishima convinced him to go with us, though. After we all left to get things together for the trip, we met back at the campus where we saw a huge bus. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 smirked. "I saved up my allowance and got us a party bus. Let's go." Everyone piled into the bus and I sat down at one of the window seats, looking out the window. I hoped this would be a good way to take our minds off of everything else happening. Your POV. I stretched and stepped off the bus, the girls following. It was about noon now, and we noticed a guy walk out front. He gave us a bright smile. "Hello, ladies. I assume you are under the 𝗂𝗄𝗄𝗃 reservation. We have a party suite ready for you all, as well as snacks and drinks in the room and a sectioned-off hot springs. For you." We all gaped at Momo again and she smiled. I am 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗃, I'll go to check us in. With that, she walked inside and the guy turned back to us. Shall I take your things to your room? I imagine you ladies don't want to drag that to the top floor, he said, bringing forth a baggage trolley. We all gave him our bags and thanked him, heading inside after Momo. She turned around just as we caught up to her, smiling. I've checked us in. We're on floor 10, suite 10-00. It takes up the entire floor with separate rooms for each of us. We all cheered again, going up in the elevator, chatting animatedly. We all settled down and had some snacks and drinks when the bellhop brought us our luggage, and we unpacked in our separate rooms. By that time it was later in the afternoon, nearing evening. How about we all head down to the hot springs? Toru suggested, and we all nodded in agreement, getting our towels and flip-flops. Once everyone was ready, we headed to our secluded hot springs, each of us hanging up our towels and hopping in. I put a foot in tentatively, testing out the warm water. Whoa, it feels amazing, I said, eventually leaving my towel behind, leaving me in my birthday suit as I sank into the water. All the other ladies hummed in agreement, and I sighed out. This was relaxing. Though I couldn't help but feel like there were eyes on us. Well, probably nothing. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗲. We had made it to the hotel, but I could have sworn I saw a glimpse of 𝗳𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏/LH/C hair. It must have just been another person. We went inside and checked in, getting a couple different rooms for everyone. Once we had all settled in, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 suggested we head to the hot springs. All the guys agreed, and we headed downstairs, going to the steamy pools. However, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 seemed to have other plans than getting into the pool itself. He kept his towel on and went over to the wooden wall, looking at a hole in the wood. I knew it. Babes. The angels of class 1A. They're all here. I gaped at him. 𝗃𝗲 stood up immediately and began to tread through the water. 𝗵𝗃𝗲, that is absolutely disgraceful and disrespectful to the girls. How could you plan this trip with the sole purpose to spy on our female classmates? I walked over, glaring at 𝗵𝗃𝗲. Some of the guys joined me. He was spying on. Wait. He was spying on 𝗳/N too. I grabbed his shoulder. 𝗵𝗃𝗲, that's wrong. Stop it right N. I paused my sentence when I had looked to the side briefly. It was 𝗳/N's ND form. Towel off and all. Her B/T body type, S/T body. All her C curves. Her damp hair from the humidity. I felt myself fall backwards, BLD spurting from my nose as 𝗃𝗲 yelled out and came to my aid before I hit my head. 𝗵𝗃𝗲. Mito. Maya. His calls faded out as I went unconscious from the sight. Your POV. I heard yelling from the hot springs next to us. Is that 𝗃𝗲's voice? And 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗃. I paused my sentence, seeing a black iris peeking through a hole in the wood. I grabbed my towel, stood up and walked inside. I'll be right back, I said darkly to the girls, and they all nodded, slightly fearful at the tone of my voice. I went to the other hot springs where I heard the voices of our male classmates and that awful pervert. Once I made it over, many of the guys let out noises of alarm or embarrassment, covering themselves or their eyes. I gave no hey, geez L/N. If you wanted a good time you could have j-. I cut him off by shoving 2 fingers up his nose as far as I could, watching him squirm in pain and gasp before I removed my fingers. I then gave the other males a sweet smile. Hello boys, can you tell me what 𝗵𝗃𝗲 is doing? My voice was sickeningly sweet, and they could tell, as they all cowered slightly at my false sweetness. Except Bakugo, of course. I saw 𝗵𝗃𝗲 on the floor, BLD coming from his nose. He was obviously unconscious. I walked over to the bespectacled boy next to him. 𝗃𝗲, what happened to 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲? Even the usually talkative boy seemed at a loss for words. He beheld your body on accident while trying to prevent 𝗵𝗃𝗲 from spying on you? I instantly turned red, turning on the great boy. He laughed sheepishly and I grabbed his arm, kicking him hard in the crotch. You grape-haired effer. I have half a mind to drop kick you all the way to Argentina. I yelled, fury in my voice. Once the tiny boy had doubled over in pain, I turned and gave the boys an even more sickening smile. 𝗵𝗃 had woken up by then, and he turned as tomato red as I was earlier at seeing me again, but seeing him wake up didn't stop me from warning the guys. We'll be closing that hole up now. Tell my Netta if he tries anything again that I will suffocate him with my sleep gas. My face then turned dark, as did my voice. And that goes for anyone else who attempts to spy. With that, I walked back to my own hot springs, seeing the girls. They cheered for me, having heard the ordeal, and I smiled sheepishly. Sorry about that. Had to put a stop to the schemes before they began. Don't worry about it, 𝗳𝗃𝗁 said with a smile, patting my shoulder. Yeah, you gave him what he deserved, 𝗵𝗃 quipped. Honestly, that little pervert had it coming. Momo chimed in, creating a plaster to put over the hole, and searched for any more, covering them. Now we can relax. I giggled and nodded, sinking back into the water and enjoying my time there with my friends. Your POV. We were still enjoying our vacation, paying no mind to the boys at all as we spent our time having fun with what the hotel offered. Although, most of our time was spent in the hot springs. They were absolutely heavenly. It really relieved so much stress and tension. We all loved to just lay around and enjoy the warm water. Over the weekend, we gossiped a lot as girls do, talking about assorted things. Just in case any of the guys were trying to listen in, 𝗳𝗃𝗁 had made sure to keep speakers at ready to blast heavy metal towards the guys so they couldn't hear. That was something we all thanked her profusely for. Especially me, though I also kinda wish it kept the girls from hearing what I confessed to them. A bit earlier, I leaned my head back, sighing as I felt the warm water wash over my ND body. I looked over to Mina, who had suddenly stopped chatting animatedly as she had been. Except instead of seeing Mina a few feet away, I saw her eyes right in front of me. I jumped back slightly, startled from her sudden appearance. Mina, what the hell dash? Sorry 𝗧/N, but the ladies and I have been dying to know. All of a sudden, all the girls, even 𝗵𝗲𝗄 and 𝗳𝗏𝗄, were surrounding me, yelling at me in unison. Do you have a crush on anyone? I immediately turned red, a certain someone coming to mind in an instant. Oh, of course not, that's ridiculous. I spoke shakily, shaking my head at them. I've got to focus on becoming a hero, not finding a boyfriend. Well, that doesn't mean you can't at least have a crush. Plus, your face totally turned completely red when we mentioned it. Spill. Mina yelled, shaking my shoulders. I pushed her back gently, laughing nervously. I. All of the girls looked at me expectantly, on the edges of their seats. I giggled shakily again, pointing a finger. 𝗳𝗏𝗄. Don't you have a crush on that 𝗵𝗃𝗁 out of our classmates? You two do hang out a lot. She became red in a near instant, waving her earphone jacks along with her. WA. And no, he's just a doofus I hang out with to pick fun at, she exclaimed, covering her face. We all started to tease her slightly from her reaction, but it was short-lived as Mina turned back to me. Nice try, trying to change the subject. You're the mystery girl here. We've all had our girl gossip about crushes for the most part. Now it's your turn to spill. Beans. She threw her hands up, and everyone else nodded in agreement. I sighed out, covering my cherry-red face. Fine, but you ladies cannot tell anyone else. Especially him. Momo nodded first, smiling and placing a hand on my shoulder. Of course we wouldn't tell 𝗧/N. We may tease you around him from time to time. I glared at her, and the girls giggled. But we would never bluntly tell him. That would break the women's code. She spoke with dignity, and then patted my shoulder reassuringly. I nodded at all of them and groaned. Fine. I like 𝗵𝗃𝗁. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗁. Mina's eyes became as wide as saucers, as did the other girls. Her mouth dropped open, and I was certain even 𝗳𝗏𝗄's loud music didn't cover what she exclaimed as soon as she recovered from shock. 𝗧/NL/N likes 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗁. I slapped a hand over her mouth, shushing her as quick as I could. Mina. Girl code. I screamed, my face practically on fire as I heard silence from the guy's end. We could usually hear them talking a little, but now I couldn't at all. 𝗳𝗲𝗄 even stopped her music so we could listen if they heard. I whisper screamed to 𝗵𝗃, great. He probably heard that, and now it's gonna be all awkward, and I didn't really even realize the girls chattering about my newly revealed crush until I stopped my furious rant at 𝗵𝗃. Midoriya. I honestly expected 𝗵𝘃𝗁. What? No way, 𝗵𝘃𝗁 was a PP to her in the festival, remember? Well, he wasn't a 𝗵𝘃𝗃, he just beat her up real bad. But still, her spunk matches his. Maybe she's into softies. Maybe she's a dumb girls? I cried out, waving my hands. Listen, the guys are silent. I bet they heard. I wailed, slapping my hands on my cheeks. Ochako came over and rubbed my back. Hey, it's okay 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗏. I'm sure they didn't hear. Actually, we heard all of your F rant. We heard 𝗵𝘃𝗁's muffled voice from the other side, and I froze up. I grabbed a towel, wrapping it around myself. I'm going to go inside and think? I muttered, rushing off. I heard my friends tell me to wait, but I couldn't help but head to my room, hiding my face in shame. I couldn't believe it. Izuku had heard that all, and now I'd lose my best friend, and... Why is everything so complicated with love? I sighed heavily, grabbing some clothes and tossing them on. I was in the middle of braiding my hair, just tussling your hair if you have short hair, when I heard a knock that interrupted my thoughts and actions. Hey, 𝗃/N. You decent? I heard a gruff voice, instantly recognizing it as 𝗵𝘃𝗁's. I nodded, but then realized he couldn't see my nod. Hello. I heard the voice again, and this time I called back. Why, yeah, I'm good. I said. Come in. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 entered, closing the door softly, surprisingly, and he motioned towards my bed as if asking permission to sit next to me. I was shocked. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 was being polite. To me. I'm one of his rivals. Listen, he said forcefully, though with a bit of softness behind it. Before you get all freaked and go into an emotional breakdown, shithead Deku was inside while 𝗵𝗃 revealed your dumb crush. So he didn't hear a f-in thing. My eyes became saucers and I gasped. W really? Yeah, really. So don't worry so much about the F incident, K. He spoke, looking me in the eyes. I wiped my eyes slightly and nodded. Thanks for letting me know. Phew. That saves me a lot of grief. Also, that dumbass probably likes you back anyways. You shouldn't be worrying. Stop being stupid and open your eyes. I looked at him, extremely bewildered. What? He never stops ranting about you, the shitty baddest. He's always saying HD like, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗏's so f-in amazing, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗏's so f-in talented, so chances are the beach likes you back. So don't be brain dead and ask him out. With that, Katsuki stood up, heading to the door again. 𝗵𝘃𝗁, wait, I said, seeing him open the door. He turned around and grunted questioningly. Thanks again. You're... Sorry for calling you hedgehog a lot. I laughed sheepishly, and gave him a small smile. I didn't even notice his pale cheeks turn pink for a split second, before he turned again. Whatever, is all he said before exiting. I smiled at the doorway, flopping back on my bed. Maybe 𝗵𝘃𝗁 and I could go from rivals to friends. I stopped myself, a pang of guilt hitting me as I remembered my purpose. Scratch that thought. And scratch asking Izuku out like 𝗵𝘃𝗁 said. I said to myself, burying my face into my pillow. For once in my life, I actually wished I could be a normal girl who grew up idolizing heroes like everyone else. A normal girl who came to UA, not to spy for villains but to stop villains. Maybe then I'd be able to have real friends. Maybe even a relationship. It's no use thinking about that now though. My mission still isn't over, and once it is, once I gather enough intel, I'll be back to just Lady Toxic. Not 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗏. Not 𝗃/N. Not 𝗃/N. Just Lady Toxic. 𝗧/N's POV. I sighed as I laid on my bed back at the league, stretching my limbs out. Man, I'm really glad we took that small weekend vacation. That was really nice. I thought, sighing again in relief at the image of our relaxing vacation. Of course, except for the part where 𝗵𝗃 nearly revealed my crush to the entire class, but we don't talk about that. I sat up with a heave as 𝗵𝗵𝗲 threw my heavy backpack onto my stomach. I looked over at him and glared. "What the F, 𝗵𝗵𝗲?" I said, irritated. He rolled his eyes and pointed at the clock over my doorframe. "You're late for you, dipshit." My eyes widened as I stared at the clock, jumping up and throwing on my uniform. I grabbed my backpack and ran out the door, but backtracked slightly when 𝗵𝗃𝗁 offered a piece of toast. "Thanks, 𝗬𝗲𝗁. You're the best," I shouted, hearing the man chuckle as I shoved the toast in my mouth and carried it to school that way as I jogged. Luckily, I made it to 1A just in time for the first bell, and Mr. 𝗳𝗂𝗍 wasn't there yet. Jogging over to my desk, I sat down quickly, huffing and finally eating my toast slowly. Just as I nearly finished it, Mr. 𝗳𝗂𝗍 stepped into the classroom. "Were you nearly late again, 𝗳𝗏𝗏?" I turned pink and laughed sheepishly. "Maybe. Doesn't matter, you're here now I guess," he said, pulling out sheets of paper and starting to write on the chalkboard. He didn't speak until he was finished, tapping his chalk on the board. "These are the offers you all got from after the sports festival. You'll all be doing internships with pro heroes for 1 week starting next Monday regardless of whether or not you got an offer." I looked up and saw Bakugo and Todoroki at the top, of course. I was surprised to see no one had made offers to Izuku. He had an incredible power. Though, I suppose he does have to hurt himself to use it. I suddenly spotted a particular name with the number 12 next to it. That particular name happened to be my name. I couldn't believe some people actually offered for me. 𝗳𝗂𝗍 spoke again. "Those of you who got offers have to choose from the agencies that want it. For those of you who got 10 or less offers or didn't get any, you get to choose any agency that will be willing to take you. Make your decisions by Friday. Class dismissed." I got a paper from him and scanned it over, spotting a particular name. Ed-Shot's agency. He was my top rival due to both of our quirks being almost stealth-like. If I went to an internship with him, I could use what he teaches me against him. Smirking to myself, I circled his agency and packed up my papers, waiting for our next class. I looked around our classroom to see people thinking about their internships. Then I spotted a familiar mop of green hair and bounced over to it. "Hey Izuku. I haven't talked to you in a while." I shouted slightly, and the boy looked up at me, startled. When Izuku realized it was me, he instantly turned red and covered his face. My expression became a look of confusion, and I poked his arm. "What's the deal, eyes?" I questioned, and he peeked at me through his arms, then squeezed his eyes shut again. "It's just to the trip." And never mind." He squeaked out and I blushed too, but patted his back. "Izuku-kun, it's fine. I know it was an accident that you saw me. I don't blame you for any of that." I spoke softly, then gave my best death glare to a certain grape sitting behind Midoriya. The tiny boy shuddered and looked away, talking to Kaminari again. "Let's just move on from it, 𝗵𝗃𝗄?" I said, rubbing his back to attempt to comfort him. He nodded slowly, still red as he removed his face from his arms. "YY/N. Yeah, Izuku. What are you doing?" I blushed deep red as I realized I was leaning against him slightly, my hand rubbing small circles in his back. My face was really close to his. "I didn't mean to, so no." I waved my hands as I shouted in embarrassment, everyone in the class now looking as I fell back into a desk and hit my head. I groaned, rubbing the part of my head I had banged against the desk. Izuku instantly helped me up, and I brushed myself off. "That L looked like it hurt. Are you okay, Y/N? The boy asked, and I shook my head, then smiled. "You're so sweet, Izu." "I'm fine, though," I laughed, putting the desk back in place. He still looked slightly concerned, but I patted his shoulder again. "Anyways, it's almost time for our next class. Talk to you at lunch." He nodded at me and I grinned back, shooting a thumbs up. I sat back down at my desk, running a hand through my 𝗳𝗏𝗏/C hair. Then, President Mike walked into the class and began teaching. Time skip. The bell rang for lunch and I groaned. "Oh my God, I'm starving," I shouted, running out the door to the cafeteria, ignoring the shouts of midnight telling me to stop running. Once I made it, I got a plate full of food from Lunch Rush and sat down, digging in as if I hadn't eaten in weeks. I didn't even notice when 𝗧𝗵𝗃 sat down across from me. I only looked up when I heard his laugh. "Wash so funny?" I asked with my mouth full, my eyes averting up. "You're eating like you haven't eaten in forever." "Slow down, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 patted my back, and I swallowed and grinned sheepishly. Sorry about that. Anyways, did you know who you were going to do an internship with?" "I'm going to one with 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏." The boy shrugged his shoulders. "I'm not entirely sure yet, since I didn't get any offers." It was then that 𝗵𝗃 popped up around the corner. "Young 𝗵𝗃𝗏, may I speak with you?" he said in his booming voice, and 𝗧𝗃𝗃 looked to me as if asking if that was okay. I waved him off, smiling, but glaring at the back of 𝗵𝗃's head. I still didn't like the man. I continued eating until the lunch period ending, wondering why 𝗵𝗃𝗏 had been gone with 𝗵𝗃 so long. Shrugging it off, I walked back to class. Your POV. 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 and I were on a train, heading to a nearby city to patrol for a while. Being a ninja, the pro hero had his agency located in a more secretive area, so we decided to just go to a random city to patrol since there wasn't much to patrol back at the agency's location. As the vehicle traveled along the rickety tracks, I thought back to the beginning of my internship. Flashback. So, you've decided to choose my agency to intern at. A wise decision, really. Your quirk seemingly has much to do with stealth. You would make an excellent sidekick to me with it. 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 spoke, looking down at some papers. I gagged internally. My arch-nemesis's sidekick. Never in a million years. He looked up at me once again, tapping his chin in thought. I decided to break the silence. Yes, my quirk is definitely best for stealth. I could utilize it well to get citizens out of danger of an active villain. I said as professionally as I could, though deep down I was cringing. 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 nodded, and then spoke once more. Your quirk. It's similar to a villain I have sought to capture for years. Are you familiar with Lady Toxic, or even perhaps related to her? He questioned. I froze up slightly, but put on my best front. I can't say I am, sir, but I have been told my quirk is similar to hers. Many times. I feigned an upset manner, acting as though the topic had hurt my pride. The man looked away. I apologize. I should not assume. There are many similar quirks, and that is no reason for me to claim you are such a heinous villain's kin. You do have more neutral and healing abilities than harming, unlike her. My best fake smile appeared on my lips. Thank you, sir. I've just been told that so many times. I can understand why people assume that, though. 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 then brought me to his sidekicks, talking to me about stealth strategy and what to do in different situations, etc. He told me we would be patrolling a city on Wednesday for me to practice what that was like. Flashback over. Eventually, the train came to a sudden halt. I started slightly, looking over to 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏. Are we there already? I questioned, looking out the window. It doesn't look like we're at a station. Perhaps they had a difficulty. He mused, and I nodded a bit, before hearing a woman speak over the intercom. Please remain seated and calm. The train will continue its path in just a few. Suddenly, a crash was heard a few cars ahead of us. I stood up in alarm, seeing 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 do the same. Stay here, he commanded me, but I merely rolled my eyes and followed anyways. I had to see what was going on. Sir, this experience will do me good. I want to see what's wrong. He sighed out but nodded, and we came across a large hole in the next cabin over, along with a 𝗵𝗃𝗏. My eyes widened in disbelief. 𝗵𝗃𝗏 hadn't told me about any attacks that would be happening. What if this 𝗵𝗃𝗏 harmed me like the last one? I saw an old man in bright yellow boots slam into the 𝗵𝗃𝗏, and looked next to where he was sitting. It was 𝗧𝗃𝗃. I ran over. 𝗧𝗃𝗃, what's happening? I asked frantically, and the boy looked over to me, seemingly just as surprised to see me as I was to see him. I don't know. That 𝗵𝗃𝗏 just burst through the side of the train, and we have to go after it? I yelled, hopping out and running along the street. I turned a corner and looked over my shoulder, seeing 𝗧𝗃𝗃 following me. I suppressed a smile as I looked in front of me again. I turned a street corner, not hearing my green-haired companion stop and call out to me. I saw an old man in bright yellow rocket boots beating up another 𝗵𝗲. Izuku ran to my side, looking over to who I was looking at. Gran Torino, he shouted, and the man kicked the 𝗵𝗲 again before jumping over. Damn it, boy. I told you to stay in the train earlier, the old man said angrily. He then looked to me. Who's that girl? Your girlfriend. Both of us immediately turned red, and Izuku raised his hands and waved them in front of his face. And no, Gran Torino, it's not like that. We stopped being flustered as we noticed the 𝗵𝗲 approaching. I unleashed some gas at it, hoping since these ones were obviously weaker that it would work. The 𝗵𝗲 waved at the gas and turned to me, approaching me slowly. Watch out, Gran Torino shouted, but I stood there, frozen. The 𝗵𝗲 then stopped when it saw me and turned around, walking away. I was confused. Were these 𝗵𝗲 programmed to recognize me as a friend? Why did it? 𝗵𝗃𝗲 questioned, but stopped as sudden realization crossed his face. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗲. We need to find 𝗳𝗿𝗺𝗺𝗊𝗃. He's going after the hero killer. The hero killer, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗲, who hurt 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗲's brother. My eyes widened. Let's go. We ran off, but I didn't notice Gran Torino's glare behind me. Gran Torino's POV. I must warn 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗄 when we get back to my house. That girl is bad news. She's got to be working with the villains. That 𝗵𝗲 looked her straight in the eyes and left her alone, and went to attempt to kill many others. It must be programmed with her as a friend in mind. Izuku's POV. As 𝗧/N and I ran through the alleyways, I spotted it. 𝗳𝗃𝗄 was below the hero killer, about to be murdered. I used full cowl and burst in, knocking him away just in time. Don't worry, 𝗳𝗃𝗄. 𝗧/N ran over by my side, her gas mask fastened on her face as she handed everyone else in the vicinity one as well. We'll save you.